Our water connection acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land throughout Australia and their connection to country, sky, water, and community. We extend our respect to the traditional custodians of the place where you are listening. This episode is recorded in Ghana country and Darawal Nation. What does it really mean to engineers with communities rather than for them? What happens when young engineers step outside of their comfort zone into community-led work? And are technical solutions enough to solve water and sanitation challenges? Today, we're releasing a special episode to shine the light on an amazing organization working to tackle global water and sanitation challenges. And amongst all the other challenges that are out there, which is Engineers Without Borders. My name is Jess Bohorquez. I'm on a mission to increase you in water curiosity, and this is our Water Connection. Welcome to this new and special episode that is coming out today. This episode is a little different as this season has already been a bit different. We're taking part in Podcasthon in the 4th edition here in 2026. Podcasthon is a global movement where podcasters come together to use their platforms to spotlight organizations doing good in the world. For our Water Connection, that felt like a perfect opportunity to highlight the work that Engineers Without Borders, an organization that reminds us that engineering isn't just about infrastructure, technical solutions, but it's about people, partnerships, and long-term impact. So we're very excited to talk about that today. So that's what the conversation is today, is really what it means to work alongside communities, to listen in before acting, and to design solutions that last. To learn more about Engineers Without Borders, we are joined today not by one, but two amazing guests, Jack Newgent and Meg Cummins. So Jack is an experienced humanitarian engineer and international development program manager with over 10 years of experience, and he's currently serving as a senior manager for international engineering programs at Engineers Without Borders. He specializes in water, sanitation, and hygiene, so WASH technologies, and infrastructure. And he's recognized as a strategic thinker and collaborative leader, confident in working in complex cross-cultural settings across the Asia-Pacific region. Throughout his career, Jack has focused on strategic program planning, project management, and capacity building for diverse teams. On the other side, we have Meg. Meg is a water engineer who has worked across Australia and Cambodia and is currently working at Aurecon, based here in Australia. Meg recently took time away from her role to volunteer with Engineers Without Borders in Cambodia for a whole year, supporting sanitation solutions in challenging environments, including communities affected by seasonal flooding, hard ground, and water scarcity. She's also an IWA and Grandfa's Youth Action for SDG 6 fellow, and she's researching or has researched on how immersive humanitarian experiences shape young water professionals and how those skills can be brought back into the Australian water sector. She's a strong advocate for youth action because Meg has also spoken at the United Nations General Assembly on behalf of young people across the world. Welcome to a Water Connection, Jack and Meg. Hi, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Jess. Thanks for the invitation.
No, this is incredible. I was just getting excited as just reading kind of these bios and everything. So I'm so excited to have a chat with you. We'll start from the very beginning. Maybe some people might not be that familiar with what Engineers Without Borders is. So Jack, how would you describe what Engineers Without Borders do?
Yeah, Engineers Without Borders Australia, or EWB for short. We'll probably say that a lot, so I'll get that out front.
Yeah, but
So EWB is a for-purpose organisation, and we work in a couple of different fields. So we work in engineering and community development sector, and also in the education sector, predominantly within Australia for the education sector. Our engineering work is focused across 3 country programs in Cambodia, Vanuatu, and Timor-Leste, plus our engineering on country program in Australia working with Indigenous communities. And we take a human-centered design approach, really understanding the community, spending time to know what the challenges they're facing are and what strengths they have, and how engineering could support them to create solutions to those challenges. And then our education sector is really about building a network of people and embedding that human-centered design knowledge to engineers and STEM professionals more generally right across Australia, right from primary school up to tertiary education and beyond.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And like, I love how when people answer the first question, they're also answering the following one. Because my following question was like, on how is EWV kind of approach different to a more traditional engineering? Like, people here might be more familiar with more, what I call traditional, but like, I don't know even how to call that. But like, is that human centered design how you would describe kind of what EWB kind of does a little bit different when they comes to those aid and education projects?
I'd say that's the big difference is that a traditional engineering design approach would still have consultation up front with a client or a community. And then the design process would happen behind the scenes more in a silo. Whereas EWB's approach is really engaged and collaborative the entire way through that design process, always seeking feedback from the end user, always taking like conceptual designs and ideas and having discussions with the end user, whether that's a community or whether it's a local government in the areas that we work or another organization, always maintaining that collaboration and pulling in new information along the way, incorporating that into the design process. And we recognize that that does tend to take a little bit more time, takes a little bit more effort, and it requires a special skill set, like we say a socio-technical skill set. So somewhere between social and technical, bringing those together. We believe that the results at the end really good, and it helps to make sure that any infrastructure or technologies that are designed as a result are more sustainable as well.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a very interesting kind of way to tackle these problems. Is there anything there, Meg, that you would like to kind of add to what like Jack was describing?
I think Jack got it in a nutshell. I think the really special thing about EWV is that it brings engineers from all different aspects of the engineering spectrum together with this purpose of really creating a better world and making a difference. And I think the more we're finding like young professionals, whether that's in the water space or otherwise coming through university, the more we find people be really passionate about wanting to make a difference and wanting to do something bigger with their engineering and with their career. And I think EWB is like the perfect avenue for that, because you can get involved at university, but you can also get involved as somebody when you're working as an engineer as well.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's a great initiative, kind of where you can get involved in different ways and at different stages of your career. Going a little bit more on kind of like the type of challenges that EWE kind of tackles, focus probably more on water, because I mean that's what we talk here. AWE really works around Asia Pacific, like on water sanitation and hygiene programs. So Jack, I'm interested to know, what are some of those common challenges that you have seen in communities that communities face when it comes to wash in this particular area, for someone that might not be that familiar with this?
Yeah, a couple so in our Cambodia and Vanuatu programs, we've got a big focus on working with communities that are in challenging environments. So the places where water and sanitation solutions, standard solutions, don't work or aren't sustainable or have a negative impact on the environment or the safety and health of the people around. So we tend to focus on working in those areas. And examples would be flood-prone areas, hard ground areas that are water scarce, have high water table, those sorts of places. And we work with those communities and we come up with some more innovative solutions that are fit for purpose in those really specific contextual constraints that they face. Yeah, that's one of the specific challenges. And that's a lot of the work that Meg was supporting the Cambodia team on while she was over there for a year. It's working to support them on developing and testing a number of solutions for hard ground and water scarce sanitation areas. And some of the other big challenges that we see, and I'll talk more about our community level water program that we run in Timor-Leste, is really around operation and maintenance of infrastructure. So there's often really great infrastructure put into rural communities, not just in Timor, but in other similar contexts as well. But they can quite often fall down after a few years, well before the planned end of life of that infrastructure. And often it comes back to relatively simple operation and maintenance issues, and for a number of different reasons, whether it's knowledge hasn't been transferred from one person to the next, or parts and materials or funding unavailable for small fixes. I'd say that's a really big area that's a challenge, and one that we're putting a lot of a lot of focus on trying to support communities to improve.
Yeah, I would imagine like that one of the focus, of course, is to make solutions that can be sustainable. Like that is very different to maybe other approaches that have done in the past, where like you go and dump a solution and then here it is, blah, and then it's probably doesn't talk to the community where you are. And I remember Meg, we did a talk. We work for the same organization, and Meg was like describing this kind of importance of really bring the community on board. And one thing that highlighted there when you were talking, Jack, was like that the normal solutions, the standard solutions that we might use in countries like Australia don't work. So I was interested, Meg, how do you come up then with the solutions that are not kind of the things that maybe people have learned in their engineering degrees, or are they doing in their traditional kind of engineering careers? How do you come up with solutions out of the box with these communities?
Yeah, I think that is both the hardest part, but also the most exciting part about working in Engineers Without Borders. I was very lucky actually where when I was working with Aurecon, I had a chance to work on a pro bono project with the Engineers Without Borders team in Cambodia. So I got a chance to work from the Australian engineering team's world on a project that was designing a water treatment plant in rural Cambodia. And that was really my first time when I realized that like the designs that we do in Australia, we can't just pick up and put them
there.
An island in the middle of the Mekong in Cambodia and hope that they work. Because exactly as Jack was saying, not only do they need to be designed and built, but they also need to be maintained and operated. And how many days are you going to be able to get somebody onto an island in the middle of the Mekong in Cambodia that only has access via a longboat and only has bikes on the island? There's no cars. How do you get somebody there frequently enough to maintain a system that's so important to be maintained so that it can operate properly? How do you design something that can be designed and then also built, but then everything has to be taken across on a longboat and taken up this really steep slope? And also there's not as much money as there would be in an Australian space. And so it can be really challenging kind of bridging that gap and thinking differently and opening your mind. But I think that's also a really awesome skill that you do get by working with Engineers Without Borders. And I think the really special thing for us is that in my role in Cambodia, I was there officially in capacity building to support the incredible team of engineers that are in Cambodia. But honestly, they know their stuff. They are incredibly capable, incredibly knowledgeable. They inspired me every day, and they are so good at solving problems with whatever they have. And so for me, it was a real learning curve of just following and listening and learning and asking the right questions and taking a step back and trying to understand why the things are important to the community and what needs to happen so that it all speaks together and we're able to make sure that it operates. So in my perspective, I think that, yeah, it was really exciting, but something that I needed to rethink. Like, it's not as much, Australian standards, super in the box. It was, okay, well, what do we have access to? How many moving parts will there be? How will this actually work and operate? How will community members learn about this and learn to love it and learn to own it? Because if you build this real complex system, then it becomes quite terrifying as a concept in terms of it's much easier to just walk away versus if something is really made with local material, is made alongside local community members who want it and also who know how to operate it, it's going to be loved and used, and they're going to really appreciate the value that it brings to them as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that was kind of touching a little bit on my next question, which both any of you can jump in, and is like you, Jack, talk a little bit about that kind of balance of like the technical, but also really listening to the community. How does that work? How do you make that actually happen? Is it like because you're guys in the same kind of community and spending time with them, and that's a natural kind of flow of things? Is it like a structured kind of path that you take to really balance that technical, but then the cultural, the social, the environmental perspectives that you're trying to bring in your solutions?
It definitely takes time is one thing, and time to build trust with the community is, we've tried to go in and do workshops before, and really well designed workshops, and try and get all the information we need from, the first week of workshops. But the fact is that, you're building a relationship with that community between our organization and our people and that community. And that just takes time. You can't expect that they'll be upfront with all the relevant information straight away. There will be things that they're guarding and waiting to see if this is a genuine collaboration. So that's one thing that we've learned, is that we do take a structured approach, and we run connecting to community workshops, which is a really well-structured approach, and the team are very good at it. But it's critical that we have a long-term engagement before we get to that point, and that we continue to have a long-term engagement afterwards with regular touch points before we're trying to actually finalize a design or implement anything, because information keeps coming after those initial workshops. And a typical, like a really good example is a water system in Timor, where we did connecting to community workshops, built a great relationship, designed a water system which included some inputs from springs. But after we'd done some initial works, then the community really trusted us. And they said, okay, these guys are really great. They know what they're doing. They're genuine. They're here for the long haul. Then they told us about some other relevant springs that they had been keeping a bit of a secret. And they're culturally very important to the community. And that's why they weren't sure if they would like to talk to us about those. And they allowed us to incorporate those to become part of the grounded gravity flow system in the future. So sort of there's a need to iterate that design. Yeah. Anything to add, Ben?
Yeah, I think exactly what you mentioned, Jack. I think something that I saw when I was in Cambodia is, again, factoring it in, making sure that right from the beginning, time with the community, continually returning to the community and taking what you're designing. So if you're asking questions and you're taking them away, returning with evidence of what you've done with those questions, sharing that information, I think is also really important. So even when you're at the end, the system is being designed and you've gone back and you're testing it and seeing if it's working, take back that information to the community, show them how it's working, what that means, how that's going to affect their health, like continuously bring that information back, because they are the ones that own this project and own the idea of their own futures too. So like continually making sure that the follow-up happens for a long time too. So for instance, in Cambodia, we were working on a toilet in seasonally flooding areas. So half the year they're underwater, half the year they're not. And it was a very unique toilet design. And I was there at the 2-year point after they were initially implemented. So quite a long way. And I went for one of the last monitoring and evaluation visits, and the community was still coming up with other things that they would like to change, but also things that they really think is really valuable that they now see 2 years afterwards. And I think taking that time and continuing that relationship, because community members talk, communities talk. If they get a really great experience with you, they're going to talk to their friends. But I think the most important thing was actually working with grassroots organizations. So the EWB Cambodia team are engineers that are based in the city, but they then have partners with on the ground organizations that have those connections, that already have those relationships. And we are going in with a trusted source and then working alongside them and the community to make something happen that everybody wants a great outcome for.
Yeah. That was actually one of my other questions, like how is the structure of like a team? So like, because Jack, for example, we were talking before we started recording, you have been based in Timor-Leste for like a number of years now. And then we have people like Meg that came kind of for a while, for like a whole year. And like and then you have the local teams as well. So is that kind of the structure of a normal team for like projects in which EWB, oh my God, I cannot even say it, are involved?
Yeah, we've got relatively small teams in each of our program offices, sort of 3 to 5 staff in general. And we've got local in-country leadership in each of our offices. So like a country manager in each office. My position, although I'm based in Timor, is actually a head office position. So I'll clarify that. In the org chart, I'm in Melbourne. Yeah, so we've got in-country leadership. We've got a technical team and some sort of community engagement people as well. And then our positions like Meg are always coming in not to deliver work directly as an international volunteer engineer. It's to work through counterparts within our team and with our partners and to support building capacity on the ground through delivering projects. That's the general intent of those volunteer placements. But we try and punch above our weight. We're a small organization, but we try and punch above our weight by creating lots of really strong partnerships is the intent with local, like said, grassroots organizations and local organizations, but then with a whole array, like we partner with other international NGOs and with corporate partners, with universities. We have a really expansive network of partners, and that allows us to, really push to a bigger scale than we would with just our internal resources.
I think it's like everything. If you do things together, you go further instead of trying to do everything on your own. So Meg, I was like interested, you already touched a little bit on this, but like what skills did you develop during your time volunteering that you don't often get to practice maybe in your traditional engineering role?
I think one of the biggest skills that I learned was how to engage with communities and how to really interact with the people that are using the resources that we're providing. I think is something that we don't necessarily always get a chance to do in the Australian engineering space. We're very, we do the job, awesome, but we don't necessarily have a chance to see the community and to understand the impact. And to get a chance to go and be a part of the monitoring and evaluation phase of something and really see the impact that it can have on communities and on their everyday life, and to sit and listen and to learn about how much it's changed them. Like we met this lady in the rural town in Cambodia that seasonally flooded, and I was asking her about the impact through my incredible team who were talking and translating. And it didn't matter that I couldn't understand the language very well. I tried. It was really the feeling that I could feel. Like I could feel her excitement and her passion and her enthusiasm without even hearing the words that she was saying. And then when I understood the words she was saying, she was talking about how by having access to a toilet when the floods come and the river levels change, and they would used to have to go out to the flooded forest to go to the toilet in the dark, there was so much risk of her kids falling over off the boat. There was so much risk of violence, especially because the women would go alone and the men would travel together. And there was so much anxiety that went with going to the toilet at nighttime. She said that when she was pregnant, she was so worried because she felt like she was going to fall off the boat. And so to then hear that that worry and that stress was removed, that she could go to the toilet in the middle of the night in the wet season and feel safe and feel like her kids were safe, made me realize how much everything is connected. And that ability to listen and to learn is something that I would love to use in the engineering world in Australia. I'm not quite sure what that looks like, but getting a chance to work with communities and learn from them is something that I got a lot out of.
Yeah, I think it's, as you say, like when you are kind of experiencing the community that upfront, maybe when we're talking bigger projects here in Australia, you're more removed from that, and you're concentrated in one part of the process, and you do your bit, and every bit counts, and at the end we deliver magnificent solutions as well. But only a few people might get that interaction at the end, and having that opportunity to kind of really see the impact of what you do would be quite interesting. You guys work in like a lot of different challenges. Jack mentioned like before, like around of course the access to water and sanitation, and also the operation and maintenance of these systems. What and seeing through your experience in your volunteering and through your work, Jack, for a number of years, what gives you hope when you think about the future of this wash kind of challenges, and the fact that of these solutions are more community led?
I think like the scalability of it and transfer of knowledge. Every community that we're able to work with, or other similar organizations are able to work with, aren't just putting in solutions and infrastructure and new products or technology. They're also transferring new knowledge and opening up new ideas. And it's kind of like, we call it the coconut Wi-Fi, the way that, communities speak, and then it gets passed through the mountains and it gets passed across islands, and that information then goes far and wide. And it's something that's very organic, and it's very hard to track or really understand how that works in a detailed way. Those innovations then, maybe not immediately, within, months or years, are going to start to pop up in other places. So I think the impact of water and sanitation work in the development space is not just in the beneficiary communities themselves. Other people are likely to come and visit those areas, see improvements, see different ways of doing things, different ways of managing infrastructure. And those ideas are going to get transferred naturally over a long period of time, slowly, over the course of years, improve the situation more broadly and even regionally.
Yeah, that's a really good like kind of ripple effect, where you might kind of have an initial kind of interaction with one community, but those solutions truly like travel around the broader community and other regions.
Absolutely.
Anything there that comes to you, Meg?
Yeah, I think in a kind of similar way to Jack, what gives me hope is that there are so many levels of people, of incredibly passionate people across the globe who are really excited about the opportunities that we have to ensure clean water and sanitation for everyone. That like a lot of the water engineers, if not all of the water engineers that I meet, are incredibly passionate and excited and working towards ensuring that this happens for every single person around the world, that we have an organization like EWB that brings those people together and connects them together, and they can use their networks, as Jack mentioned, to really bring to life this idea. And it makes me really excited that we have incredible engineers on the ground in Cambodia, in Timor-Leste, in Vanuatu, who are so capable and so knowledgeable in this space, who are on the ground talking to communities. Like the fact that all of these things come into play and that everybody is out there trying our hardest day in and day out and understanding that by access to clean water and sanitation, we are unlocking this whole nother level of possibilities. We're working towards climate action. We're working towards girls going to school. We're working towards reducing poverty for people across the globe. I think really action towards SDG 6 is the way to unlock all of the goals themselves. And that makes me really hopeful that we'll make it happen.
Oh, fantastic. No, it's a great way to kind of like wrap up kind of this part of the episode where we really got to learn a little bit, not everything. So like, please, if you are interested in Engineers Without Borders, you can get in touch with Meg or Jack or to me, and then we're happy to kind of connect you with more of the organization. We're going to move now into the final questions that I always have to all of my guests. The first one is, how would you explain your work to your family member who knows nothing about the sector that you work on? Let's start with you, Meg.
I think that's a great question. I'm very lucky, I guess, where my work as a water engineer in Australia has given me the opportunity to work in the water and sanitation space with Engineers Without Borders. I think often I will start with the fact that it's very easy for us to think about our toilets, flush our toilets, turn on the tap, and not really think about how it comes to be. And it's really easy for us to think that everybody around the world has access to a flushable toilet and tap water that you can turn on and it's perfect and incredibly tasty as well. But that's not the reality. And for me, it kind of all stems to my own experience when I got a very special chance to work at a orangutan rehabilitation center in Borneo when I first went out of school, and I met so many people in this really rural community, and everybody had a newer smartphone, but nobody had access to clean drinking water because the oceans had made their wells saline. And when I talked to them and I realized that this was something that wasn't being prioritized for them, and I realized that it was really the basis for their entire livelihoods, it made me realize how incredibly important it is for engineers and for people in the water space to be ensuring that clean water is something that everybody has access to. So when I explain it, I say that I'm trying to work with communities to make sure that everybody has a toilet that they can use that's safe, so that they have a tap water that they can turn on to drink, but also so they can wash their hands and they're not sick, which then unlocks a whole nother level of opportunities for them to live their best life.
Amazing. What about you, Jack?
I was hoping you go to me first because I needed some time to think. But now I feel like I'm copying the answer a bit. No, but I do struggle with this. Like it is, I do find it difficult to explain to some people at times what EWB Australia is about and what my work is and how that impacts to the communities that we work with. I think similar to me, I really try and paint a picture of types of contexts that we work in. So people are unfamiliar with the contexts in which that we're working, and they're all very unique. So I like to talk about the communities we work in, talk about the political context in the places that we have our programs. And I think once people understand the context, then the benefit and the type of approach that EWB Australia takes speaks for itself and becomes like kind of like the obvious thing to do. So that's I think it's really about setting the scene on the context and encouraging people to read and learn and engage more broadly about just global issues and global political climates and different ways that people live. So I think sometimes people that are born and bred and brought up in Australia maybe have one view of the world, whereas there's so much more out there once you start traveling and exploring and see the way that different people live and the strengths that the communities had, the way that they work together. I think there's so much. Like I've been based in Timor-Leste for 7 years. When I think about all of the strengths and all of the really great things about Timor that I miss whenever I go back to Australia, even for a few weeks, then I think it's not about applying Australian knowledge to Timor. It's about sharing and merging our ways of living together to, pick the best fits and pass on knowledge to each other in the best way that we can. So I kind of explain it in that way.
Yeah, no, I think it's a beautiful compliment, like of the answer that you two have, like on one the actual purpose, of course, the sanitation, but also the intricacies that it has with other parts, and with really seeing beyond kind of what we grew up around. The other question is, what would you like to share with people early in their water careers? We have been talking about this and how important it is, like maybe for people to have opportunities to apply these skills in a different way. But what would be like that message that you share with people early in their water careers who might be listening to this conversation?
what I'd like to share with people entering the water careers is to think outside the box. Don't necessarily try and plan out your career right at the start. This is probably part of my nature, is to just not plan things that much. But I also think it's kind of worked out in my favor for my career as well, to date at least, and really be open to new ideas and new opportunities, and to not be afraid of change or afraid of taking what might look like a risk in a career. If you've got an interest or a passion, or you want to follow something, whether it's working in community development or going overseas or whatever it is, or maybe it's designing railway sleepers or something, whatever your passion is, follow it and take risks and follow new opportunities. Try not to get stuck in a rut. That would be my advice.
Amazing. Yeah, it's a very lovely advice. How about you, Meg?
I love this question. I get asked it a lot, but I think the reality is I'm a young water professional. I worked for 2 years and then I took 2 years off. I spent a bit of time traveling, but then I went to Cambodia. And honestly, when I finished uni, this was everything that I wanted. Knew that I wanted to get into the water and sanitation space. I knew that I wanted to go with EWB and work in country. Like, I actually found a book that said goal next to EWB on it that I'd written when I was like 16. So it's something that I've always wanted. And I really got overwhelmed by the concept of how do I get there, because it's so different for everybody. Everybody who enters this sort of space and this sort of field, everybody does it in a different way. So when I started asking questions, it made me both excited and terrified. Everybody had a different answer of how they got there and what their journey was like. And as Jack said, I'm a planner and I wanted to know exactly what I needed to do in the next 5-10 years to get there. So I just started asking people what skills they felt like they needed before they got into the space. And at first I thought it was that I needed 5 years, 10 years, like a certain number of many, many years of experience to get into working with Engineers Without Borders, to get into water and sanitation. And it made me a little at ease when I started to ask these of people who were quite high up, so leaders of incredible NGOs and organizations across the world. And the answer that I got more often than not was actually, there's a lot of value in being a young water professional, in being new and being fresh. You come in, yes, with these ideas of technical capacity and knowing how to engineer. So you do need a few years of experience to make sure that you have a technical background. But the most important thing is having that passion, having that enthusiasm, knowing that you are never going to be right straight away, knowing that you need to sit back and listen and learn, knowing that really it's the community and their direction that matters the most, knowing that you are not the source of all information is really important. So coming in when you're a young water professional and you're really used to sitting back and listening, and you're really used to just taking whatever journey happens, is really important. And somebody said to me, look, you have the equation. The equation is the engineering capacity, right? But you need to know how to just sub out the X's and the Y's and sub in random things that happen, whether you're in Cambodia, whether you're in rural Australia, whether you're in Sydney. And being able to do that is a skill set that is a lot easier to have when you haven't been pigeonholed or like very kind of driven into one very technical skill set that often happens the more you're an engineer, the older that you get and the more experience that you get. And so I was still overwhelmed when I went to EWB in Cambodia, and I still wasn't sure if I would be the right fit. But honestly, when I was there, I realized that it wouldn't have mattered if I had 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years experience. What actually was really helpful for me was my ability to ask questions, to listen, all of the things that people call soft skills, but I prefer to call essential skills, which is the capacity to really be a leader and to be a team member and to, work in community development and work in human-centered design, community-led design. And all of these things came together. And I really love it when I get young water professionals who are at the same stage as me or a few years before, and they ask questions, because I think it's really important for us to talk and to learn and to connect and to see what other people are doing, but also realize that your path is your path. And by asking questions, as Jack said, and talking to people and building up your network, you'll realize that anything is possible, especially with the incredible people that you have to support you. And something that was really special to me was when I went to Cambodia, I was a bit overwhelmed. I was like, I don't know everything. I'm supposed to be building capacity and working with these incredible team of engineers. And I had somebody who was a few years ahead of me at work say, you know that you're not alone, right? Like, you're not going just as one engineer. You have a whole network of people in Australia who would kill to be going to Cambodia with you. So use us, ask us questions.
Yeah.
And on a few occasions, I called up my mentors and the people that I work with at Aurecon, and I said, hey, there's this question, there's this problem, I don't know how to solve it. And they were so excited to be a part of the solution. So you're not alone. You have incredible capacity. The passion and enthusiasm is what you need, and you can do anything, and you can always reach out to anyone in the field and ask questions, because we were all where you were one day.
No, that's amazing. I think you both kind of highlight very important things. Like as you start in your career, you pretty much think that you have to have it all planned, or that first place where you go and work is going to be the place. I've seen a lot less of that, like in this kind of new generation of water professionals. But I think it's very important to highlight that we don't have it all planned, and sometimes that is a good thing, being open to opportunities. But in your case, Meg, you did have a plan. You had that dream, you had that passion, and it was a matter of finding how to get there and be able to lean into your networks, to build those networks in the first place, to make those things happen. So I think it's incredible, valuable advice, and I think that I take for myself as well, for my own career. And to wrap up, this is we have been talking about this the whole kind of whatever time we have been talking. But why do you work in the water sector?
Just because it's such a critical enabler for just about everything, right? So if you're looking at agriculture, if you're looking at health, you're looking at any other sector and wanting to see sustainable outcomes in those areas, it's still not going to happen if water isn't available and if there isn't safe water available. So I think it's just, it's also, I don't know, from a kind of nerdy mathematical side, I like that side of things, fluid dynamics as well. But it's really from an outcomes perspective, it's because it's so essential. It's a basic need and it's an enabler for so many more things downstream.
Amazing. Yeah, that's so true. What about you, Meg?
Yeah, Jack. Once again, stole the words out of my mouth. But I think it really is that water is life. Everything is connected by water. Water comes in all sorts of spaces. And I think it's a really beautiful way for us to make a difference. It's also something that connects every single person in the world. And I think it makes us realize that it is just honestly pure luck where you're born and what your access to water and sanitation looks like. And so ensuring that everybody everywhere has that feeling of not having to worry about where their water is going to come from, of not having to worry about whether them or their children are going to be sick and miss out on school because they have diarrhea, because their water isn't clean, or because their sanitation isn't set up. I think it's a really beautiful thing that connects us and the environment as well. And for me, I really wanted to work in a space that was making sure that our beautiful environment is here to stay, and to ensure that we have clean water and drink and sanitation links very much to a healthy environment. But I think what's kept me in water is the community of people. Like, you can meet anybody who works in water and immediately connect with them because they're here, because they have the bigger purpose of making a difference. And it's just beautiful. And I love that. I love that everybody day in and day out, whether they're working on a very technical thing or a model, or whether they're working on really high level policy or strategic direction, are all working to make sure that everyone everywhere has access to water, but also that our ecosystem is thriving. Makes it really special. And so I love part of the water world and people like you, Jess, who inspire us every day.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for both of you for joining me today. I think it's very inspiring to see like that, funny you say, Jack, like that nerdy side and like the equations and all of that. That's sort of how I got into water as well. But then you stay because you see kind of the impact that it has in our communities and the importance that it has to really get us into a future where we can live this world in a better place than what we receive it. So thank you very much, both of you, for really coming here and talking about the incredible work that Engineers Without Borders do. Like, I really love the opportunity to use this platform, Podcasthon, to give a voice to these initiatives that they're pretty well known, like in the Australian kind of like when I talk about like students in engineering, they know about it, but this is never enough. Like, if we spread the word even more, like we get to more people, and you never know, maybe someone listens to this and now they want to be an engineer and work in solving these challenges. So if we got to one person that is inspired, I think that all the effort is worth it. So thank you very much, Meg and Jack, for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having us, Jess. I also realized that once upon a time when I wanted to do this, I was at an event and Jack was speaking at it. And I was like, I want to be like him. And then also I'm an avid listener to your podcast. So being able to be here and have you two in the room is a real privilege. And I know that everybody will love listening to both of you.
Thank you. No, and we love listening to you as well.
Yeah, thanks, both. It's been a great opportunity. And anyone else that's out there, any listeners, even if it's just that one person this has resonated with and you're like, I want to get involved, jump onto the EWV Australia website and have a look. We've got like volunteer opportunities that pop up, long-term stuff like MedDear, or sometimes we look for short-term technical support of projects or make a donation to our programs, whatever it is. There's lots of ways to get involved. Join our chapters in each of the major cities or with universities. Get involved. It's a big network and there's lots of people with lots of knowledge to share, and we're a community. So come and join us.
Amazing. Thanks for that plug-in. I'll make sure I'll put the EWV, the website, in the show notes. So yeah, that's all for today on our Water Connection. Thank you very much for listening and being part of this community, and keep coming back to listen to new episodes. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform so you know when our episodes are dropping out, and any social media for updates, highlights, and more ways to connect. Keep your curiosity flowing, and I'll see you next time.